Welcome to the Life After Sugar podcast, the podcast that's not just about sugar, but about your relationship with it and also with food and especially with yourself. So if you want to discover your life after sugar and hear inspiring stories from all kinds of people who also cut out sugar in their way, at their pace, for their own reasons, this is the podcast for you. Because when you take away the sugar, you can finally discover the real sweetness in your life. I'm your host, Netta Gorman, and today I'm talking with Nicola Locke, who's an ambassador for the Public Health Collaboration in the UK, and that's a UK-registered charity dedicated to informing and implementing healthy decisions for better public health. In this episode, Nicola and I chat about low carb and her own journey to completely turning her diet around, but also how she sees food and, human biology. We'll get to our chat in just a minute. But just before, I wanted to thank you for listening to this podcast. And I'd love it if you could add your rating. Just scroll down and click on the stars to rate it. And if you're wondering how to leave a review, go to your podcast player, scroll down and click on Write a Review. And if you want to get my 5 tips to get rid of cravings, then go to aftersugarclub.com and download your 5 tips there. All right, here's my chat with Nicola. So I'm talking today with Nicola Locke, who is an ambassador for the Public Health Collaboration in the UK. Where exactly are you in the UK, Nicola?
So I'm in the northwest of England in a seaside town called Southport. You would say that our closest city was Liverpool, about 40 minutes away.
Oh, lovely. Oh, nice. All right. So can you let us know, just tell us a bit about what your life was like when you were growing up in sunny England and what you used to eat as a child?
Going back to sort of early years, I grew up in the 70s and 80s, and I would have said that it was pretty normal relationship around food. I don't remember food being an issue. I don't remember people being particularly overweight in those days. I mean, I think you probably agree. At school, there was maybe like 1 or 2 overweight kids, and you always remembered who they were because they were unusual to be so overweight. So yeah, just a pretty normal upbringing. 3 meals a day, probably no snacks in between. And if I could have a snack, I always remember my mum saying things like, oh, you can have half an apple and things like that if I wanted to snack in between meals. But just normal food really, and not a bad relationship with food until really getting into the late teens, early 20s.
And that was because we're the same age, so that was late 80s, early 90s, right?
Yeah.
And then what happened then?
I don't know. I think maybe getting into the sort of going out more, meeting people, starting work in my early 20s as well, being around people that maybe food was a bit of an issue, and also having my own money. So, I remember as a kid, my grandparents come in and give me 50p. And the first thing I would do was go to the shop and buy sweets with all of that money, because it was so rare to be given sweets, or they were a very rare treat, that if I had my own money, I would spend it all on sweets. But when you've got your own money growing up, you've got your first job. And I worked in a hospital as well, and they're not the best environments for food anyway. And staff canteens was, chips or fries with everything, and just going mad on all the pre-packed stuff that I could get my hands on. And there was always a tuck shop, run by volunteers, which was right outside the staff canteen.
Just to explain to the non-Brits, a tuck shop is where you get snacks and things, right?
Yeah, like sweets.
Just wanted to translate that.
I know, I forget who I'm talking to, sorry.
So basically you worked in a hospital, and are you telling me that the hospital food was rubbish?
Yeah, I think so. This was the early 90s, and I would explain it more as sort of like a school canteen kind of food. When I was at school, I was never allowed to stay for school dinners, and so I always had a packed lunch, which was a sandwich, a packet of crisps, chips for the Americans,
Yeah,
and maybe a piece
translation.
or maybe a piece of fruit. I have the same 3 things every day, or maybe very rarely a chocolate bar. Whereas all the kids that stayed for the school dinners, they were just eating greasy food, really, just, you know, fries and chips and pies and things like that. And I used to envy those kids. I wanted to be one of those kids that had school dinners. So of course, when I went to work in the hospital and had this canteen that was serving all that food, of course that's what I wanted to eat. I didn't want to take food with me and be sensible. And the only time that I did try to be sensible was on those occasions where I wanted to try to lose weight for an event, you know, a holiday coming up or a wedding to go to.
Yeah, and that was considered normal as well. In other words, you sort of eat whatever without sort of thinking about what it's doing to your body, and then surprise, surprise, you have weight to lose. And then, you know, in some occasion, social occasion comes up and you think, oh, I've got to lose 10 pounds fast.
That was it. I mean, 10 pounds really was not a lot of weight to lose compared to what some people have to lose these days. I mean, I've lost, when I went low carb, I lost about 1.5 stone, maybe just over, and I've maintained that, maybe gone up a little bit.
Can I translate how much that is again?
Yeah.
A stone is 14 pounds. So 1.5 stones, 14 plus 7, that's 21 pounds.
Yeah. So I've pretty much kept that weight off, and maybe I've put a few pounds back on since then. But years ago, when I used to think that I was overweight, I was maybe, well, I was less than I am now.
Huh. Yeah. Yes. So you grew up as a child, you know, normally, or what we consider normal, and you weren't overweight as a child, right?
No, not at all.
When did the weight start creeping up?
Well, in my head, the weight started creeping up in my early 20s, but looking back on it now, I didn't have a weight problem. It was just maybe I had an unhealthy attitude with what I could see in the mirror more than anything. And I was around a group of people that I worked with and friends that I went out with. It was all about the way you looked and who was the thinnest. So no, I didn't really have weight problems in my early 20s. Although when I got married, I lost so much weight. I mean, I looked so thin, I looked ridiculous. But I thought that I had to lose all that weight to look fantastic on my wedding day. And then, of course, like 10 pounds or so would go back on, and then the holiday had come up. So of course, crash diet again to lose that weight, to get to the weight I wanted to be. It was all about the number on the scales, nothing to do with being healthy or the way that I looked even. I had to get to, I wanted to be under 9 stone or something like that, which is like, what, 126 pounds, which is ridiculous for me now.
Yeah, how tall are you?
5'5", 5'5".
Yeah, that's a nice healthy weight, isn't it? And it's like, and that was also considered normal. You know, I get back to this word of normal, of it's normal to put on weight as we get older, and it's normal to crash diet, to lose that weight fast for, you know, a wedding or whatever occasion. You know, our definition of normal.
I know, but I do think that the actual proper weight started going on, and looking at it now, I think I stopped smoking in my mid-30s. And looking back, I think that's where the proper unhealthy weight started going on. I mean, I'd had 2 children by the time I was 30. I'd lost the weight and gone back to whatever I was before. So I'd obviously got a maintenance weight, but then I'd stopped smoking. I'd been smoking since I was about 14, 15, stopped when I was about 35. And as is quite often with people, they put the weight on because they just eat more. And at those times I was eating what I thought was the sensible diet. So I was eating low fat, which means that I was eating lots of carbohydrates and sugar. And I mean, I even remember one diet I went on was called the Rosemary Connolly's hip and thigh diet. And it was ultra low fat. She'd had gallstones or something, and she'd ended up, you know, making herself better with the diet and losing all this weight. So she had this book out, and it was basically eating sugar the whole time. It was awful. You could eat, you know, you could go to the shop and buy yourself sweets, but as long as it didn't have fat in it, and you could have the the little mini Kellogg's cereals for breakfast, or a little Cocoa Pops or a Crunchy Nut cornflakes. That would be a healthy breakfast with skimmed milk and cottage cheese and just awful food. And I used to do that for breakfast and lunch, but by the time I got home, I was like, I just need a proper meal.
Yeah.
So.
And what we also used to think was normal is to concentrate on the weight loss and not even question why we were putting on all this weight in the first place. Because then we just tried harder to be low fat in our generation, right? We never stopped to think, oh, hang on, why am I doing all this and still putting on weight?
Yeah, I mean, I did lose the weight when I sort of did the low fat diets, but that's because they're so calorie restricted.
And how did you feel on them? Were you hungry a lot?
Oh, awful. Yeah, really, really hungry and miserable. And, I'd see other people eating things like, someone eating a full fat yogurt and thinking, oh, there's no way that I could eat that. But knowing, now I know that that's the things that I should have been eating. But we were frightened. We were just told that this was so wrong. And, not to cook with butter, all the things that taste so lovely, you had to cut out.
So it was a massive turnaround for you to discover the low carb way of eating, which I just call normal, seeing as we're talking about the word normal. And how did that happen?
Well, it happened, sort of the seed was planted about 7 or 8 years ago. And I'd seen a doctor in the UK, Dr. Michael Mosley, and he was being interviewed on the TV about, he'd got this book out called The 8-Week Blood Sugar Diet. Yeah. And he was talking about, he'd been diagnosed either pre-diabetic, I'm not sure, or diabetic. I think it was pre-diabetic. And he decided that he didn't want to go on medication and he wanted to research it. And he wrote this book. And the book really was mainly around eating 500 to 800 calories a day. But the basis of it was low carb. So that just sparked my interest. So I started reading more books and following him a little bit more because he's a health journalist. So he makes quite a lot of programs in the UK.
Yes, I know.
And really didn't do much with it. Maybe tried to cut out potatoes, pasta, rice, or at least cut them down, knowing that I shouldn't really be eating them. And then it was the same old story. I got on the scales after Christmas in January 2019 and just wanted to cry because I'd put so much weight on, and thought, right, I'm going to go for this. So I downloaded an app on my phone just so that I could track how much sugar and carbs I was eating, which was brilliant actually, because I was amazed at how much sugar there is packed into things that you'd got no idea. See, my idea of cooking, say like a bolognese, was to cook a bit of mince and throw a tin of sauce on it. Yeah. That was me cooking from scratch. Or the same with curries and things like that. It would be like a tin of sauce. But when you actually scan these and put them into these apps and you see how much sugar's in them. So I think that got me kick-started. And then I just threw myself into it wholeheartedly and realised how much I was enjoying it, because the weight came off quickly to begin with, which was great. And probably by about 5 or 6 months in, I'd lost, like you say, about 23 pounds at the highest, I think. And then it put a bit back on. And then, of course, you want to tell everybody else that I've been dieting for so many years, for the last 30 odd years, and nothing's worked. And now this is working, but nobody wanted to know.
Isn't that funny, right? You finally find something. What was different about it from all the other diets?
I think the lack of hunger, and that it worked, and that you lost the weight and it stayed off, and that you could eat all this delicious food. Why wouldn't you want to? Of course, you do have people giving you funny looks like, oh my God, you're going to have a heart attack eating all that fat. But I'm like, well, no, you're not actually. And I even studied more into it. I studied with Nutrition Network because I wanted more information, because it fascinated me so much. I've never really been into science of anything really at school. I wasn't really interested in the way things worked, but I was interested in how what you put in your body does to you and what you can get out of it.
Yeah, and what they tell you, and the difference between what they tell you and what actually happens in your body. I just want to take a little break to tell you that the 12-week experience in the Life After Sugar program is now available. This opportunity is for you if you're an intermittent faster and you feel ready to address the deeper reason why sugar has such a strong hold on you. You may know all the theory about sugar and how it affects you, but you need help to take action and implement it. If you recognize that in order to feel truly free from sugar, you need more personalized guidance and support from someone who's been there and done that, like myself, then this hands-on tailor-made experience could be a perfect fit for you. So if you're looking for personalized, step-by-step guidance and support from me, so that you can let go of sugar and get to a place where you don't need sugar or miss it anymore, then check out the details of the Life After Sugar 12-week program at aftersugarclub.com, and in the top menu, click on the Program tab. That's aftersugarclub.com and click on Program. Yeah, because I think we've all been, hoodwinked by the diet industry to believe things that are contrary to basic human biology. So when you started, can you just tell me the name of the app that you used?
It's called NutriCheck.
Okay, all right, yeah. Good to know.
You get it, I think you get like a week free, and then I ended up paying for it because I just thought it was valuable for me.
Yeah, it's a good investment, definitely. And so you started studying about I'd call it so-called low-carb way of eating, because I really do believe it's just eating. But because we're so used to the low-fat way of eating, we have to give this one a new label. But what did you find out that blew your mind the most?
I don't know. Everything, really. I think when I did the first course with the Nutrition Network, it was the Nutrition Network Advisor course. And this is part of the Noakes Foundation, which is Tim Noakes, which I'm sure a lot of people will know.
Yeah.
So it's his company. And just all the amount of brilliant people that came on. And one thing that really stands out was Bitten Johnson. She was one of the lecturers on the Nutrition Network course. And she explained how addiction, you can get to addiction, people who can, have a couple of biscuits and then put them down and that's it, walk away. Yes. You get these people who maybe have half a packet and then think, oh dear, I shouldn't have done that. Maybe like a harmful user. But then you get the people who are going more towards addiction, and they're the people that can't stop, and they have to keep getting more and more to get that same dopamine hit. And I think things like that had never really occurred to me. I knew that the low carb I understood what it did to your body, but what it does to your mind, I think that's one of the things I would say really blew me away, because I've gone in to study more about that, and I've even done a neurology course because I'm really fascinated in the brain-gut connection and mental health and things like that, and how you eat, how it could make you feel mentally.
And Michael Mosley is quite knowledgeable about that as well. I've got his books here about this brain-gut connection.
Oh, right? Yeah, the Clever Guts book. Yes. Yeah.
So were you in the health field before you started studying this about nutrition or not?
Not a healthcare professional. I was a medical secretary. I worked for psychiatrists actually in Liverpool for about 10 years. And then I've gone on to do more sort of like pain management and orthopedics is what I do now, but on the admin side. But I think when I studied at college, it's a 2-year course to be a medical secretary. So you had to learn a lot of clinical things. You had to learn the medical terminology. So I do sort of understand the terminology. So I think that's maybe why I like the book by Michael Mosley, because I understood it.
Yes, definitely. Some people say, oh no, you've got to do all the scientific reading and the PubMed articles. And I'm like, well, it actually, whether or not you read those types of articles, I mean, great if you do, but it actually doesn't change anything that happens in your body. Where you read up about it, it's going to happen in the body, regardless of where you get your information. But knowledge is power, in my opinion as a teacher. And then what took you to become an ambassador for the public health collaboration?
Well, it was during the first lockdown in about April, May last year. There was a conference, the Public Health Collaboration Conference, and they'd had to hold it online because everything had got cancelled, and the conference was on YouTube. And I don't even know how I stumbled across it. I think I might have heard them talking about it on another podcast, the Public Health Collaboration. So I'd looked them up, and they'd had about 3 or 4 talks were by ambassadors. And these were all people who had I think the majority had had diabetes. So they were sort of the patient who then were going on to educate other patients through their role as a public health collaboration ambassador. And I just thought, that's really interesting, and it's something that I'd like to do. But I thought, I've not got any health issues and things like that. I'm just a former overweight person. What do I know about this? Who's going to listen to me? So that's when I decided to study with the Nutrition Network. So when I'd done the first course, the advisor course, which included coaching, that's when I approached the Public Health Collaboration and applied to become an ambassador. And so now I'm their ambassador for our local area. So that's been about 2 years now.
Oh, wonderful. And can you tell us a little bit about what it is, the Public Health Collaboration?
It's a UK charity, and it's dedicated to sort of informing healthy decisions on lifestyle. And their role as an ambassador would be ideally to get into places like hospitals or GP surgeries, and to speak to the family doctors and maybe set up groups on their behalf. At the moment, I'm working with 2 local surgeries where we run groups for people with diabetes or people who just want to lose weight. So I'm just there sort of to give information, because we can't give medical advice. I'm not medically trained, but I'm there to provide them with a sort of like a patient advocate role.
And
one of them, we have a WhatsApp group. So we have the monthly meeting with the doctor, and then there's the WhatsApp group, which basically is for the patients to interact. But I'll keep an eye on if there's any questions, like maybe they'll sort of say, "Oh, Nicola, what do you think to this?" But it's nice. It's like a little community.
Yeah,
really
lovely.
Fulfilling.
Yeah, totally. And funnily enough, I remember for the longest time thinking, who's going to listen to me? 150,000 downloads later, I'm like, oh, I think some people are listening.
Yeah.
But not so much who's going to listen to me in the sense of who's going to obey me, but who is going to listen to someone that isn't wearing a white coat, which is your position and my position. And funnily enough, more people do listen because we've walked the walk.
Yeah, well, there's one of the ambassadors. I remember him saying years ago something about, you're an expert by experience.
Right.
So the medical experts can tell you information, but is it their story? Have they been there and lived it?
And what I found is that some of the information isn't even necessarily accurate.
No,
yeah.
The low fat, and also the cholesterol and things like that. It's really frustrating because I have family members who are on blood pressure medication and all kinds of things, and I try to persuade them, maybe you could go to low carb and see how you get on, but they're really not interested, and it does worry me. Yeah, because I don't want to be that person on medication in another 20-30 years time.
Yes, it's a little bit ironic that a lot of the messages from the medical establishment are biologically inaccurate. How did that happen?
Well, you'll go to a doctor and the doctor will say, don't question my medical degree, and I've been a doctor for 30 years. And you're saying, well, have you actually learned anything in the last 30 years? I know they have to do these courses that I do with the Nutrition Network. They get these CPD points for them. But you can only get those if you're a medical professional. So I can't get the points, but they could do these courses and it goes towards their professional development. So the doctors and the nurses and whoever, all the healthcare professionals, they should be keeping up to date, but they're just told what they want them to know, I think. I don't know. Isn't medical education funded by the pharmaceutical companies anyway?
Apparently, in certain places in the world, I don't know what it's like in the UK, but I mean, big food apparently in the States, gives a lot of money to a lot of medical establishments. So yeah, that's also worth wondering about as consumers and patients. So you work with the Unwins, is that right?
Yes, that's one of the groups that I helped to run. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so Jen Unwin, who I had on my podcast last year, and David Unwin, very well-known doctor in the low carb
Yeah.
world. And so in the contact that you have with people, how do you find that the reaction is to your message from like just regular people?
What, the patients that I work with, or just the general public?
Both, really.
The experience of working with the low carb groups, particularly the one that we've only set up about 4 months ago, is that the patients, it's mixed emotions of sort of shock and sometimes a bit angry about, why has no one told me about this before? I've been going to Slimming World and Weight Watchers and doing this and this for years and years, and this is going to fix me. Well, not fix you, but help to improve your health. Yeah. So I think with the patients, to begin with, they're very shocked and a little annoyed, but you do find that as the course progresses, they're actually really very grateful and just so happy that people are helping them. I mean, one woman in this new group that we started 4 months ago, was the first meeting she went to was just kept saying, I'm so grateful to be here, that someone's going to help me. I mean, she goes to Slimming World every week and gets weighed, but does our diet.
Yeah. Yeah, isn't that funny? So she does the low carb, but doesn't tell anyone. And then
No, she just goes to get weighed.
That's funny, actually. And so, yeah, it is. I remember feeling very sort of annoyed and then really like manipulated into having been given this bill of goods of eat low fat, cut your calories, and nothing to do with how your body actually works. And quite frankly, I never wondered. I never actually asked the right questions. I just swallowed what they told me.
Well, exactly. I mean, I don't go to the doctors really. The last time I went to the doctors was maybe about 5 years ago, because I'd put my back out lifting a load of books up. And while I was there, she said to me, oh, we've not been for a while. I think we'll do some bloods and we'll do your blood pressure and things like that. Anyway, she said, oh, your blood pressure's quite high. And I thought, well, yes, my back's in spasm. So obviously, but we'll send you for some bloods and then, come back next week. So I went back with the blood results, all were fine, but no, the blood pressure was still a little high. So then she sent me off to get this 24-hour ECG, which came back textbook perfect. But no, never did she say to me anything about my lifestyle. What was I eating? Was I sleeping? Was I under stress? All things that could have affected my blood pressure. What she did say to me was, after before we got the ECG results, was that, oh, well, we'll see what the results come back as, and if it's still high, we'll have to think about medication. So she'd not mentioned anything lifestyle, and I'd not really thought about it because I'd not got proper low carb. But I think now that I would sort of say, well, hang on a minute, because if I took my dog to the vets and he wasn't well, one of the first things your vet says is, how much exercise do you get in? What are you feeding him? It matters what you feed your animals.
Yeah.
I mean, I've even put my dog on grain-free food now because he used to suffer quite badly from stomach issues. He's perfectly fine. It's amazing.
Funny, isn't it? Yeah, my dad's dog has got diabetes. Yeah, and I reckon maybe we should go and see a vet instead of going to see a doctor. And again, I've got a fantastic doctor who I give him props for sitting there and having me as a patient, where he shows me, oh, your cholesterol is quite high. And I'm like, good, that's what it needs to be.
Well, how long do you get with your doctor though?
Well, funnily enough, I have to say here, I think it's supposed to be 15 minutes, but my doctor is always, an hour and a half late, even when your appointment is at like 8:30 in the morning. So, but when you're with him, he spends more than 15 minutes with you. So you can see why he's always late, but you appreciate it when you're the one in front of him. But, he's lovely, because I'll ask him, well, which type of cholesterol? Well, what about, my triglycerides, and what about and so he'll answer. And I said to him, look, the total cholesterol is high, but that's because the HDL is high, and that's a protective. And I mean, it's not like I'm teaching him stuff. He knows that stuff. So, but he is good enough to like put the papers aside for the blood work and say, yeah, okay, let's talk about something more, that can help you. But basically there's nothing that is wrong with me anyway. I remember 7 years ago when I told him I'd cut sugar, and he was all for it. It was great. Yeah, really. So he says, well, if you feel better, what can I tell you?
We all need a doctor like that.
Yeah, he's wonderful. And actually, yes, exactly. They, I guess they should all be like that. But it's like with teachers or with anything else, you got a mixed bag.
I mean, I think maybe the younger ones coming in might get it.
Maybe. Who knows?
Yeah, I think it takes a few generations, doesn't it?
Totally. Yes, definitely, for it to filter down. And
I mean, my kids are sort of in their early 20s and they see what I'm doing. I mean, my eldest son, he doesn't live here anymore, and we went out for a meal for his birthday, I think, and we said, well, where shall we go? And I suggested a restaurant, and he said, is that you compatible?
Yeah,
and I said, yes, lovely. That's fine. If they serve steak, it's fine.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, lovely. And so how do you find day-to-day living being low carb? Is it difficult?
No, not for me now. I don't even think about it. It's enjoyable. I actually look forward to my meals. Whereas, I mean, I work at home, so I'm on my own all day. And previously, I probably would have either not bothered to eat or just like picked something and ate it at my desk. Whereas now I make a point of cooking myself something like, I mean, today I'm baking and eggs for lunch and a bit of Greek yogurt afterwards. But what I'll do is I'll put my phone down to one side and go and sit outside in the sunshine in the garden and just eat my meal and just watch the birds on the bird table and things like that, and make a thing of it. Whereas before, meals were just something, it's 12 o'clock, I've got to eat. Oh, it's 5 o'clock, I've got to eat again. And I never liked eating breakfast anyway, so I just don't do that anymore. And some days, during the week, sometimes I'll just go one meal a day just because I'm more productive if I don't have to stop to eat.
Yeah. So
I don't plan to do that really, but
it happens naturally. Yeah. So you do intermittent fasting, like naturally?
At least 16 hours. Yeah.
And you feel great?
Yeah, brilliant.
Well, there you go.
I mean, looking back, there's always this hindsight thing. Once you know things, you think, oh well, actually I probably did have a few issues years ago, but I just thought that, well, it was quite normal to feel rubbish in the middle of the afternoon and want to put your head on the desk and fall asleep. And, I used to have skin issues that I didn't think were that much of a big thing. I had like a patch of psoriasis on my elbow that I'd have to go and get cream for every so often because it'd flare up. That's completely gone. I used to get puffiness had just come up underneath my eyes for no reason. I don't know if it was something I'd eaten, maybe I'd had a reaction to. I don't get that anymore. So I probably was sort of a sick person waiting to be, you know what I mean? I was in waiting as such. Things were happening in the background, because once people are diagnosed as pre-diabetic, it's been going on for years.
Yeah, exactly.
People will say, oh no, I'm not diabetic, I've had bloods back. And it's like, well, maybe you're not now. I mean, I've not been diagnosed diabetic, but I wore a continuous glucose monitor for a couple of weeks just because I was interested. I thought, well, if I'm going to work with diabetic patients, then I should know what it's like for them and what foods can do to you. And it was amazing. I actually enjoyed the 2 weeks that I wore it for. The only time I got a massive spike and then a crash was I ate one of those medjool dates. And oh boy, that was, I mean, you do get spikes when you eat, because I understood that, because I just thought, you got to flatline the whole time to be healthy. You don't, you do spike when you eat. But what's important is after a couple of hours, whether that's come back down normal again. But when I ate the date, it shot up and right back down again, like really hypo. Wow, so I was like, I won't do that again. But then things like, I make my own granola, but I do put porridge oats in it. And a lot of people would say, oh, no, you can't eat porridge oats. But they actually didn't affect my blood sugar at all. So
well, there you go. Yeah.
So it's very individual. You can't, one size doesn't fit all.
Exactly. Yes, exactly. Which is why, now I think Why are we getting that one size fits all message about, cut your calories and whatnot? Whereas it not only is it biologically inaccurate, but it's not one size fits all, and so it's so frustrating. And it's so great to see that, there's more and more of us who have taken sort of our personal power back to actually get the information that is right for us.
Well, I think once you've realised that you've helped yourself, you want to help other people if they want to be helped.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's wonderful. Yeah, and that's what you're doing with the public health collaboration.
Fantastic. We went to a conference actually. Actually got to meet people in person. Even though I've been working with the young ones for the past 12 months, it's been via Zoom, so I'd never met them in person. So I got to meet them face to face and had a photograph taken with them, of course. And you feel like you've known them forever. Because it's a lovely community. Just everybody likes it. Those 2 days of the conference was just amazing. I felt like crying when it was all over. I was like, I just don't want to leave these people. They're just it's a wonderful community. Even if meeting people like you on Facebook and meeting people on Twitter, and you feel like once you do meet them in person, you feel like you know them. I mean, there's Dan Grief, don't you? He's got a group, UK Low Carb, which is a big Facebook group and a podcast. And I actually met some people from there at the Public Health Collaboration Conference. But I felt, people come up to me and say, "Hi, Nicola," and it'd be like, "Oh, hi." It's like as if you'd always known them. It's really weird. And I would never have gone somewhere like that on my own before. I'm the kind of person who won't walk into an empty room on my own, a crowded room on my own. If we ever went to a restaurant or something, I'm not going on my own, will you come with me? But now I'm like, no, I'm happy to go on my own.
Fantastic. Amazing. Yeah. I'm going to put the link to the Public Health Collaboration here below this episode, or with this episode. And thank you so much for talking to me.
You're welcome. I really enjoyed it. Thank you for asking me.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you. What a wonderful chat with Nicola. And as an ambassador for the Public Health Collaboration in the UK, Nicola is making concrete change in how people in the UK, and with this podcast, people all over the world see food, eat food, and have access to low-carb resources so that they can learn how to transform their health and their lives through what they eat. And if you want some free resources about what real whole foods are and where the processed food companies hide those sneaky sugars, then head on over to my website, aftersugarclub.com, and click on the tab, What to Eat. You'll find 3 videos there, one about which foods don't have added sugars, another about how to find these foods at the grocery store, and the 3rd video is about what's the deal with fermented foods, because these are also whole foods that look after your gut health, and gut health is central to your general health. And while you're there on the website at aftersugarclub.com, download my 5 tips for getting rid of cravings. Whether you're an intermittent faster or not, cravings can really stop you from feeling free with your food. So download those 5 tips at aftersugarclub.com. And you can get more free resources and tips on the Life After Sugar YouTube channel, the Life After Sugar Facebook page, and come and subscribe to my Instagram account at My Life After Sugar. That's where I post pictures of what I eat, what I do, sometimes some inspiring quotes, or sometimes just pictures of our cat, so that you can see that it's totally possible to live a fun and active life, even if you don't eat sugar. And if you're ready to get some personal guidance, support, and accountability so that you can let go of sugar and feel more confident in your food choices and feel healthier because you've finally made peace with sugar, so that you get to a point where you don't need it or miss it anymore, then I have 2 different offerings for you. The first is the Life After Sugar program, where you get 12 weeks of personalized, customized support and guidance from me, with frequent accountability calls, according to your availability and time zone so that we can keep in touch as often as you need to make sure that you let go of sugar step by step and discover real freedom from sugar. That's the Life After Sugar program at aftersugarclub.com, and in the top menu, click on the Program tab. And if you need more of a self-study format with less frequent check-ins with me, then the After Sugar Club may be a better fit for you. Go check it out at aftersugarclub.com and click on the green button, Join the Club. Thank you for listening. That's it for this week. Keep in touch and see you soon for another episode.